60 years of practicing medicine in the mountains of Sardinia taught me something that would get me laughed out of most modern conferences. The patients who lived the longest, the ones still walking their olive groves at 95, still cooking their own meals at 102, they were not eating what the nutrition guidelines told them to eat. They were doing something that looked almost backwards by today's standards. They were eating more fat, and they were eating far less protein than the recommendations say you need. I am Dr. Marco Filippi. I have been a physician in the Nuoro province of Sardinia for over 6 decades. This island is one of the most studied longevity regions on the entire planet. Researchers have come here from Harvard, from Tokyo, from London, trying to understand why our elderly do not die the way elderly people die elsewhere. And in all those years, watching thousands of patients age, I have come to understand something that modern nutrition science is only now beginning to catch up to. The way we have been telling people over 60 to eat is quietly accelerating their decline. And today, I am going to explain exactly why and exactly what to do instead. If this kind of conversation is useful to you, please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and activate the notification bell so you never miss what our doctors share here. Now let us get into what I have spent a lifetime observing. Let me start with the protein myth, because this is where most of the damage begins. For the last 30 years, the message to aging adults has been relentless. Eat more protein. Protect your muscle. Drink your protein shakes. And on the surface, this advice sounds logical. As you age, you lose muscle mass. Muscle requires protein to rebuild. Therefore, eat more protein. The logic seems airtight, but it ignores something critical happening inside the aging body, something I watched play out in patient after patient who followed this advice faithfully and still declined. Here is what the research now confirms and what I observed long before the studies arrived. In people over 60, chronically elevated protein intake, especially from animal sources, activates a cellular pathway called mTOR. Think of mTOR as a biological accelerator. When it is switched on, your cells are in growth mode. They are building, dividing, expanding. In a young person, this is mostly beneficial. But in an aging body, chronically activated mTOR is associated with accelerated cellular aging, increased inflammation throughout the vascular system, and a significantly higher burden on the kidneys, which are already filtering less efficiently after 60. The patients in my village who ate modest amounts of goat cheese, legumes, and small portions of fish were not protein deficient. They were protein appropriate. Their mTOR was not constantly floored. Their cells were spending time in something called autophagy, a biological cleaning process where the body breaks down damaged cellular material and recycles it. Autophagy is essentially your body's internal maintenance system, and it cannot run properly when protein intake is chronically high, because protein, especially in large quantities, is one of the strongest suppressors of autophagy there is. The Blue Zone researchers who came to Sardinia documented this. The longest-lived men here traditionally derived their protein not from large slabs of meat, but from legumes, small amounts of aged sheep cheese called pecorino, and occasionally fresh fish. Their daily protein intake was modest by modern standards, and their bodies at 90 and beyond were functioning in a way that stunned the visiting scientists. Now, subscribe to this channel if you have not already. Like this video, and make sure the notification bell is activated. What comes next about fat completely changed how I counsel my patients. So if less protein is part of the answer, why fat? And not just any fat. Why are we talking about increasing fat intake in people over 60? This is where I need to take you inside the aging brain for a moment, because the brain is where this conversation truly begins. Your brain is approximately 60% fat by dry weight. It is the most fat-dense organ in the human body, and the type of fat your brain uses for fuel, for structural integrity, for the myelin that insulates every nerve signal you send and receive, comes almost entirely from your diet. When you are young and metabolically flexible, your body can manufacture what it needs from various sources. But after 60, something changes. The brain begins to lose efficiency in metabolizing glucose, its primary fuel. This is not Alzheimer's disease. This is a normal feature of aging metabolism. PT scan studies published in the last decade have shown reduced glucose uptake in specific brain regions, beginning in the late 50s and early 60s in cognitively normal adults. What does the brain turn to when glucose becomes less efficient? Ketones. Ketones are produced when your body metabolizes fat. And the fascinating thing, the thing that changed how I practice medicine, is that the aging brain often metabolizes ketones more efficiently than it metabolizes glucose. Feeding the aging brain adequate dietary fat, particularly the monounsaturated fats found in extra virgin olive oil and the medium-chain fats that convert rapidly to ketones, is not indulgent. It is neurological maintenance. I had a patient, a shepherd named Gavino, who came to me at 78, worried about his memory. His daughter had noticed he was forgetting names, misplacing tools, losing the thread of conversations. His diet had been changed by a well-meaning younger doctor in the city who had put him on a low-fat, high-protein plan. And within 4 months of returning to the traditional Sardinian diet, higher in olive oil, lower in lean protein, with legumes as the primary protein source, his daughter told me he seemed to have come back. His recall sharpened, his energy stabilized, his sleep improved. This is not a miracle. This is biochemistry responding to appropriate fuel. Let us talk about the cardiovascular dimension, because I know what you are thinking. You have been told for decades that fat causes heart disease. That dietary fat raises cholesterol. That cholesterol kills. And I understand why you believe this. It was taught in every medical school, printed in every guideline, repeated in every newspaper for 50 years. But the science has shifted dramatically. The original hypothesis linking dietary fat to heart disease was built on flawed epidemiological data. The studies that followed, the large randomized controlled trials, have repeatedly failed to show that replacing dietary fat with carbohydrates improves cardiovascular outcomes. In fact, several major trials showed the opposite. The pre-dimed study, one of the largest dietary intervention trials ever conducted, found that a Mediterranean diet enriched with extra virgin olive oil, a diet high in fat, reduced major cardiovascular events by approximately 30% compared to a low-fat diet in people at high cardiovascular risk. What damages the aging cardiovascular system is not fat. It is chronic inflammation. And the dietary patterns most associated with chronic vascular inflammation are diets high in refined carbohydrates, on industrial seed oils and excess lean protein without adequate fat to balance the hormonal and inflammatory response. The traditional Sardinian diet was never low-fat. It was fat from the right sources. Olive oil pressed fresh every autumn, whole milk from local animals, small amounts of aged cheese, walnuts and almonds from village trees. These fats do not inflame. They protect. At this point in the video, you are about halfway through, and this is the part I ask you to like this video and make sure you are subscribed with the bell activated. What I am about to explain about muscle, inflammation, and the specific foods to prioritize is the most practical part of this entire conversation. Here is where the protein and fat conversation converges in a way that most people never hear explained. When older adults eat high amounts of protein, particularly from processed or red meat sources, without adequate dietary fat to modulate the metabolic response, several things happen simultaneously. Insulin is stimulated more sharply. Inflammatory cytokines increase. The gut microbiome, which shifts considerably after 60, responds by producing more of the bacterial byproducts associated with vascular inflammation. And the kidneys, working harder to process excess nitrogen from protein metabolism, begin to show strain in ways that do not appear in blood tests until significant damage has already occurred. But when fat is present in adequate quantities alongside moderate protein, the metabolic picture changes completely. Fat slows gastric emptying, which moderates the insulin response. Fat provides the substrate for anti-inflammatory prostaglandins, particularly when those fats include omega-3 fatty acids from fatty fish and walnuts. Fat supports the production of bile acids that are essential for a healthy gut microbiome in the aging intestine. And fat, specifically cholesterol, which your body manufactures and which you also consume through diet, is the direct precursor for every steroid hormone your body makes, including testosterone, estrogen, cortisol, and vitamin D. After 60, when hormone production naturally declines, eating a low-fat diet is essentially removing the raw material your body desperately needs to maintain hormonal balance. I will tell you what I tell my patients directly. If you are over 60, chronically fatigued, mentally foggy, losing muscle despite eating plenty of protein, sleeping poorly, and feeling like your body is simply running down, there is a reasonable chance that you are eating too little fat and too much lean protein. And the solution is not more supplements. It is returning to a way of eating that is older than modern medicine. So, what does this actually look like on a plate? Because understanding the science matters, but you need to be able to walk into your kitchen and make different choices starting today. The first change is olive oil, and I mean generous amounts, not a drizzle, not a spray. 2 to 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil per day used in cooking, poured over vegetables, added to legume dishes. The polyphenols in high-quality olive oil, compounds called oleocanthal and oleuropein, have demonstrated anti-inflammatory effects comparable to low doses of ibuprofen in some studies, without the gastric damage. This is not cooking oil. This is medicine in a bottle. The second change is shifting your primary protein source from meat to legumes, lentils, chickpeas, fava beans, white beans. These were the protein backbone of Sardinian longevity cuisine for centuries. They provide adequate amino acids for maintaining muscle in older adults without the mTOR overstimulation that comes from concentrated animal protein. They are rich in fiber, which the aging gut requires. They have a low glycemic response, and they are inexpensive enough that anyone, regardless of income, can eat them daily. The third change is adding fatty fish twice per week at minimum: sardines, mackerel, anchovies, herring. The omega-3 fatty acids in these fish, EPA and DHA, have the strongest evidence base of any dietary compound for reducing vascular inflammation, supporting cognitive function in aging, and maintaining the flexibility of red blood cell membranes that allows oxygen to reach tissues deep in the capillary beds. There is a reason sardines bear the name of this island. They have been feeding our elderly for generations. The fourth change is modest amounts of aged sheep or goat cheese. Not processed cheese, not industrial dairy. Small amounts of traditionally produced aged cheese, which provides fat-soluble vitamins, including vitamin K2, a compound that plays a critical role in directing calcium into bones rather than arterial walls. Arterial calcification is one of the primary drivers of cardiovascular events in older adults. Vitamin K2, found almost exclusively in fermented and aged animal fats, is one of the most underappreciated protective nutrients in the aging diet. And the fifth change, I reduce the portion of protein at your main meal and replace that volume with fat and vegetable matter. Not protein shakes, not chicken breast twice daily. A smaller amount of higher quality protein surrounded by olive oil, vegetables cooked in fat, legumes, and something fermented. That is the Sardinian plate. That is what the centenarians here actually eat. We are almost at the end of this conversation, and I want to take a moment to ask you again, please subscribe to this channel. like this video, and activate the notification bell. The physicians here share this kind of information because it is not reaching people through the usual channels, and your subscription is what allows this work to continue. I want to address one final concern because I know it is sitting in your mind. If I reduce protein, will I lose muscle? Will I become frail? This is the fear that the protein supplement industry has built an enormous business on, and I want to answer it honestly and precisely. Muscle loss in aging, a process called sarcopenia, is real. It is a genuine medical concern. But the primary driver of sarcopenia is not insufficient protein intake. The primary drivers are insufficient physical activity, specifically resistance-based movement, chronic low-grade inflammation, and hormonal decline. Eating excessive protein does not prevent sarcopenia. It adds metabolic burden while providing the illusion of doing something useful. The research on this is clear. Studies comparing older adults on moderate protein intake who engage in regular walking and light resistance exercise against those on high protein intake who are sedentary consistently show that activity matters far more than protein quantity. The Sardinian men who lived past 100 did not have gym memberships. They walked steep terrain every day. They carried things. They worked with their hands. Their muscles were fed by adequate, not excessive protein, and fueled by dietary fat that kept their energy stable and their inflammation low throughout the decades. You do not need more protein. You need better protein, less of it, more fat alongside it, and movement that challenges your body consistently. 60 years of sitting across from patients who aged well and patients who aged poorly has taught me that the gap between them was rarely genetic. It was behavioral. It was dietary. And almost without exception, the ones who struggled in their 70s and 80s had followed the modern nutritional advice faithfully. Low fat, high protein, avoid cholesterol, count your calories. And the ones who thrived had, often without knowing the science behind it, simply continued eating the way their grandparents ate. More olive oil, more legumes, fatty fish, a little aged cheese, less meat, less worry about fat grams, more worry about inflammation, about sitting too long, about losing connection to the rhythms of eating that kept human beings healthy for thousands of years before modern food science arrived to confuse everything. Your body over 60 is not broken. It is asking for different fuel. Give it fat. Give it the right protein in the right amounts. Give it the anti-inflammatory foods that have sustained the longest-lived people on this earth. And it will answer you with years you did not expect to feel this good in. Please subscribe to this channel, like this video, and make sure the notification bell is activated. There is much more of this kind of conversation coming, and we do not want you to miss it.